أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي جعلنا من المتمسكين بولاية سيدي ومولاي أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, we ask Allah to send His peace and His blessings upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We praise Allah for all the blessings He has given us, and the greatest blessing being that He allowed us to be of the ones who remain steadfast, dedicated, and loyal on the path of our Master after the Prophet, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, the prince of the believers, the protector of the Prophet and his message, Asadullah al-Ghalib, Ali ibn Abi Talib. We praise Allah for this blessing and every blessing, for without Allah we would have nothing. Assalamu alaikum, dear respected brothers and sisters, wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We bring ourselves in these nights of sorrow, these nights of calamity, these nights of tragedy, in which we remember the sorrow of Ahlul Bayt in the loss of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, the loss of Zainab, the loss of Al-Hasan wal-Hussein, the loss of all of the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, in the next 3 nights, we're going to tell this tale of sorrow, beginning with what happened in the tragedy of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam in those final days of his life, being the night of the strike in which Abdul Rahman ibn Muljam came and struck Amir al-Mu'mineen in his assassination attempt on his life. And then the night that followed in which Amir al-Mu'mineen suffered in his injury. And then finally the following night in which Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam would pass away from the wound of his injury. Brothers and sisters, inshallah, with telling the story of the calamity, we're also going to be looking at what happened in those final years in the Imam's life, what took place coming up to and building up to the actual tragedy, which was Imam Ali alayhi salam being struck and killed in Masjid Kufa. We'll begin every night reciting part of the calamity of these nights particularly, and then inshallah going into some discussion about what actually took place historically so that we can understand its context at a greater depth, inshallah. If I tell you this tale of sorrow, will you lend me your hearts to borrow? Will you shed a tear for Ali? Will you remember his tragedy? Now, brothers and sisters, remember that it is in these nights that we bring ourselves closer to Ahlul Bayt by sharing in their calamity. And that the master of our time, Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, Ajalallahu ta'ala farajuh sharif, he is lamenting in this time, and we're lamenting with him. If I tell you this tale of sorrow, will you lend me your hearts to borrow? Will you shed a tear for Ali? Will you remember his tragedy? If I tell you this tale of sorrow, will you lend me your hearts to borrow? Will you shed a tear for Ali? Will you remember his tragedy? Amir al-Mu'mineen would rise before dawn to meet his Lord in his prayers. He would enter the mosque of Kufa, where he would go to lead the prayers. He was met by his companions. He was met by the believers. Some people were sleeping. Remember the Masjid of Kufa. This place, this city was the home of Amir al-Mu'mineen, was the capital of his caliphate. Amir al-Mu'mineen would only rule for 4.5 years. This reign that Ali ibn Abi Talib would have, a reign established only to bring forth the glory of God, only to bring forth truth and justice. As dawn broke, Ali would make the call to prayer, and he would wake those who laid asleep in the house of God. As he walked by those in slumber, he noticed one man, one particular man, who was lying flat on his stomach. He paused and he gazed upon this man. He was not asleep, but rather he was hiding something. He was hiding an intention, an objective. But nothing could be hidden from the vicegerent of God. Nothing could be hidden from Amir al-Mu'mineen. Nothing could be hidden from the brother of Muhammad, salawatullahi alayhi. Ali knew who this man was, and he knew what his motive was. He said to him, "Rise from the sleep of the devil, O man. Oh man, I advise you to come to prayer and rise from the sleep that Allah is not pleased with." This man was no other than Abdul Rahman ibn Muljam, who only moments later he would be the man that history would record as the killer of the Prophet's brother, as the killer of the Prophet's brother, as the killer of the Prophet's disciple, of the Prophet's successor. Ali would proceed to begin his prayers. Amir al-Mu'mineen would call unto God's name. He would praise Allah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. He would begin in his name. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. He would sing his praise. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ali would kneel, Ali would prostrate, and Ali would rise and rise again. But Abdul Rahman would creep behind the other believers in prayer, and he would move stealthily between the lines of the men worshipping their creator, behind their imam, behind Amir al-Mu'mineen, behind Ali. Abdul Rahman's heart is thumping, brow sweating, but he leaped at the moment. As Ali, rising from prostration, not yet complete in his prayer, Abdul Rahman would come before Amir al-Mu'mineen. He would come behind him and he would draw his poison-dipped sword. He would bring forth his sword, rising it behind Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he would strike Ali on his head. He would strike Ali, and the blood would flow upon Ali's brow. And upon that strike, Ali would call to his Lord, "Fustu Rabbul Kaaba." By the Lord of the Kaaba, I have won. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam would call out to his Lord. He won the pleasure of Allah. He won the title of truth. He won that infinite legacy. He won honor and glory greater than anything in this world. Ali won. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. Brothers and sisters, as we recite the tragedy of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and the tragedy continues in these nights, we bring ourselves to reflect and ask ourselves, how did all of this take place? What was the historical context in which Amir al-Mu'mineen, the greatest individual, second only to the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, would be struck and killed in his prayer in Masjid Kufa as the caliph, as the leader, both from a religious, theological, spiritual standpoint, and also as from the level of being the statesman of his time, the head of state, at the helm, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. In that position, he was killed. We're going to be looking at some of the stories that took place and understanding historically, why did this all happen the way it did? Who was with Amir al-Mu'mineen? Who was against him? And what was all of this that led up to it? Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, the condition by which he had the position of the Khilafah was one where he did not actually seek this position. In fact, Amir al-Mu'mineen would tell people time and time again, after the assassination of the third caliph, Uthman ibn Affan, he would tell people, go and seek someone else. I am better for you as counsel than I am as chief. Go and seek someone else. Amir al-Mu'mineen, though, would be the one that people would seek after these 25 years of three caliphates, in which the people at this point had gotten to a point of civil strife that was like nothing they've ever seen before. And they thought that the only man for the job to help the ummah move forward and in the direction that the Prophet would be pleased with would be no other than Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Now, how did all of this come to be? And what was the position that Imam had with these people? Imam Ali alayhi salam made it clear in his policies. He said, I do not double deal in matters of my faith, and I will not be compromised by the wretched. You see, there was a lot of people that wanted to use Amir al-Mu'mineen and his new position as the Khalifa for them to actually have political influence themselves and gain leadership roles in the new established caliphate. A new storm thundered in the face of Ali's caliphate. What happened after Uthman ibn Affan and his assassination was that there were other powers at play that were against Uthman and what he was doing, and then came to be with Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and urged him to take the caliphate. But they weren't actually in the interest of justice and the interest of truth. This storm that we speak of was unlike any other. It didn't merely wish to display rage or fury, it rather desired utter annihilation, because there were certain people at play that wanted it their way or to the grave. What the clans of Quraysh had feared 25 years prior to Amir al-Mu'mineen's caliphate finally actually came to light. The first three caliphates gave their clans a distinction of political leadership after the Prophet. Banu Tamim, Banu Uday, Banu Umayyah all enjoyed this, being the first, the second, and third caliphs' tribes. They all enjoyed this because they were able to get their people into the helm of power. None of them were as distinguished as Banu Hashim. Banu Hashim being the clan of the Holy Prophet, the clan of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. This clan from the Quraysh tribe was the only one that was able to enjoy prophethood, imama, and khilafah all in one. Now, this was intolerable to some of the nobles of Quraysh, and the resentment that showed in the past now newly manifested itself once again. Of course, this was not only the only factor that brought about the storm that we're talking about. The new administration of Amir al-Mu'mineen and his caliphate had a mission. It was to establish a standard of just governance and showing that it actually can be brought forth into practice. Naturally, what happened with that was that this mission created policies of economic, political, and social reform that shook the status quo and worried the wealthy and the powerful. I want you to draw this to the time of the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, in Mecca when he declared his message, that the nobles of Quraysh were threatened by his newly established faith that was changing up the status quo. Amir al-Mu'mineen, 25 years later, he would actually be changing the status quo himself. What Amir al-Mu'mineen was doing was he was leveling the playing field and creating an atmosphere of equal opportunity and access to resources of the nation, of the empire, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, and regardless of tribe. Though this empowered the previously disenfranchised groups of the nation, it was not pleasing to the class of people who had tremendously benefited from the one-sided policies that were established in the past, especially in the third caliphate of Uthman. In the eyes of Allah, all men are created equal. Social status, family name, wealth, or any other fabricated distinguisher in society has no bearing on the quality of man. And Amir al-Mu'mineen wanted to make this clear to everyone. Though such a basic reality should have been welcomed in a nation that pledged to follow the tradition of God and his prophet, for some it just didn't work for their own personal gains. And they weren't ready to sacrifice all of that and having so many years where they enjoyed privilege. Hence, they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen on multiple occasions and in various iterations of advice, counsel, and recommendations to be more lenient in his implementation of social justice programs. Some of them would say, let the thing slide, don't worry about it, they would say. The people will grow tired of this, Ya Ali, they warned. Keep them close to you, keep the nobles close to you, they said. Ali responded, Amir al-Mu'mineen would respond in these occasions and every other occasion. I do not double deal in matters of my faith, and I will not be compromised by the wretched. Seeing the rigidness of his belief and the firmness of his principle, some things got complicated. Not just in Medina, but across the empire. You would find former companions of the messenger, like Talha, Zubayr, Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, who would withdraw their allegiance from Amir al-Mu'mineen, having given it to him, and then eventually withdrawing it. A small group would follow them in Medina. Muawiyah and his stronghold in Damascus refused to give Ali allegiance in the first place. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari in Kufa held a spiteful position against the new caliphate. The air filled with an irrational malevolence and viciousness towards Amir al-Mu'mineen and his new administration. And still, some of the reasons could be identified as we look closer and we study history and we listen to these stories and the individuals and what they showed in their motives and what was going on. For example, the widow of the Prophet, Aisha, was notably in the ranks of the opposition that revolted against Uthman and his caliphate, and was one of the individuals that played a role in those final days in Uthman's life. She so strongly opposed his policy and decreed that he had strayed so far off of the path of Islam that he actually should be killed by virtue of a verdict that she had passed. The opposition revolted against Uthman and his administration in a truly elaborate fashion. They spread his weaknesses. They tarnished his reputation. They hurried to support any rebellions taking place around the empire and exposed his nepotism and his unjust favoritism to the tribes of Umayyah and his relatives. History tells us that Uthman ascended the pulpit one afternoon at the Prophet's mosque. In Medina, he would ascend the pulpit in Masjid al-Nabawi. As he was delivering his sermon to those present, Aisha would actually enter the mosque. She walked in displaying the shirt of the Prophet, and she held it for everyone to see and said, "This is the robe of Rasulullah. They have not worn out yet, but Uthman has worn out his tradition." Uthman's color changed, and he visibly was affected by her words. He was hurt. He lifted his hands to the skies and said, "Lord, relieve me from their schemes. Indeed, their schemes are grand. The tension between Uthman and Aisha was very clear. When Aisha saw that the people were resolved on the killing of Uthman, as many people were disenfranchised by the policies of the third caliphate, she turned to him and she told him, indeed, Uthman, you made the treasury of the Muslims your own personal bank account. You let the sons of Umayyah loose on the wealth of the Muslims and appointed them as governors over the lands. You left the nation of Muhammad to hardship and distress. May God cut you off from his grace and his blessing. May he deprive you from the bounties of the earth. For if it were not for the fact that you pray the five, they would have slaughtered you like a camel. Now, when Uthman was surrounded and the people's enmity and sensation for vengeance had reached its boiling point, Aisha made her infamous statement that history would record. Kill Na'thal, for he has disbelieved. The message was clear, and it was repeated more than once. It was a message of validation to the revolutionaries and those in rebellion against the third caliphate. Her illustration of Uthman, especially from her status and her position, was bolstered during the first two caliphates. With the word Na'thal, it could have two meanings, both having a considerable negative impact and an effect on public opinion of the third caliphate. One, the word literally means hyena, so it could have been a derogatory term referring to the third caliph and saying, he is a hyena, kill him. He is but an animal. Or two, it was the name of a Jewish man in Medina who was known for his enmity towards the faith. Na'thal was a name of a particular individual who was in Medina, not of the community, and he had enmity towards Islam. Now, consequently, in public opinion, looking at the lofty status of Aisha at that time, they took it to heart, and they began looking at Uthman in such a lowly way and as an enemy of the faith, accusing him of disbelief and being a lowly individual. Now, this is all the while as tension is increasing and Uthman's position is weakening. Aisha announces that she would be making her way to Mecca. She left the people to deal with Uthman as they pleased, and the caliph felt the pressure of the position that he was in. He sent Marwan ibn al-Hakam and Abdul Rahman ibn Utab in an attempt to have her stay and postpone her trip to Mecca. So they wanted to remove her from going towards Mecca. She responded, I've started my journey and I've obliged myself with this pilgrimage. So by God, I will not postpone. She then turned to Marwan and she would tell Marwan, O Marwan, you seem to think that I'm a suspect in the matter of your friend. By God, if I wanted him in one of my schemes, I would have ran circles around his rule and thrown him to the sea. People understood that Aisha's departure from Medina as a symbolic declaration of war against Uthman, especially with her rejection of the caliphate's call to stay in Medina to help keep calm and de-escalate the plans of those who were in rebellion and those of the revolutionaries. As Aisha finished the rituals of Hajj, she was informed of Uthman's murder, of his assassination. She hurried back to Medina as to ensure she would have a say in the appointment of the next caliph. And on her way to Medina, Aisha crossed paths with a man leaving the city. What news comes from the city? She asked the man approaching. He said, Uthman has been killed. She replied, damn Na'thal, and thank God we are rid of him. What has transpired thereafter? The people of Medina came together for a consensus on the next caliph, and they came to the best decision, the man replied to her. They agreed on Ali ibn Abi Talib. By God, it would have been better if the skies crashed into the earth. The matter is in his hands now. Is that what you're saying? Aisha replied, yes, it is, Ummul-Mu'mineen, O mother of the believers, this is the case. Aisha turned red in the face and let out a series of moans and groans as she was so furious. What is wrong, O mother of the believers? He asked her. By God, I don't know anyone better than him, more deserving than him, or anyone that can compare to him in any shape or facet. So what do you hate about him? She paused for a moment, turned around, and said, Uthman was killed unjustly and oppressed, and I will avenge his blood. But weren't you the first to attack and denigrate him? You told the people, kill Nathal, for he has disbelieved. She said, by God I spoke and the people spoke, but the last of my words will be better than the first. Aisha returned to Mecca. The people were gathered around her at the Kaaba as she stood before the door of the house of God. She looked out and she spoke. She called on to the people in her midst and she said, O people, Uthman has been killed unjustly and he was oppressed. By God, I will avenge his blood. By God, I will avenge his blood, O people of Quraysh. Uthman has been murdered and Ali ibn Abi Talib is the one who is behind killing him. By God, one day under Uthman is better than an entire decade. One day under Uthman is better than an entire decade with Ali. Aisha launched this campaign against Amir al-Mu'mineen so openly, and she did not hold back. Her campaign can be explained by two possibilities. For one, Aisha had nothing but spite for Ali since day one. And that's the unfortunate reality. She envied him for the Prophet's unmatched love and care for Amir al-Mu'mineen since he was such a young boy, that he grew up in his shadow, and that the brotherhood that he had with Amir al-Mu'mineen was unmatched, and that even though the other companions like her father, Abu Bakr, the first caliph, would be one who would be considered as a companion of the Prophet, it was unmatched by his love for Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib. She was bothered by the fact that the Prophet held Ali and Fatima and their sons Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein in a light that was special from the rest of the household, and that they would be considered as Ahlul Bayt and those Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purified. After the Prophet passed, Aisha and Salama, both the widows of the Prophet, were sitting together. And Salama reminded Aisha of an incident that took place with the Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen. Salama tells Aisha, do you remember that day when Ali came to see the Prophet and we were with him? Ali came down from his horse and greeted the Prophet, and together they walked as the Prophet confided in Amir al-Mu'mineen and in Ali. They were gone for a while and you couldn't handle it. You couldn't bear it. You wanted to go after them, and I told you not to, and you shouldn't, but you wouldn't listen. So you still went after them, and you returned to me shortly, and you were crying. And I asked you what was wrong. And you told me that you went after them and found them speaking to each other in private. You said that you snapped at Ali saying, I only have one day out of every 9 days with the Prophet. Can't you just leave us alone on my day, Ya Ali? You said that the Prophet went red in the face and turned to you and said, go back. By God, no one from my family has spite for him, nor anyone from the people, except that they are outside of the faith. You came back, O Aisha, in remorse and in defeat. Do you remember that? Aisha said, yes, I remember that. You see, Aisha was the wife of the Prophet, but she did not enjoy the status and adornment of those individuals that were from Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Her envy, which turned to spite, ate away at her, and that all started with Ali ibn Abi Talib. In the end, Ali was the Prophet's most beloved. Ali was to Muhammad as Aaron was to Moses. And Ali put his life on the line for the Holy Prophet time and time again, ever since he was a child. Muhammad saw no one in the world more dedicated to him than Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali was his shadow. Ali was his everything. Muhammad raised him, and there was no love like it. The second possibility is that Aisha's opposition to Uthman was intended to pave the path for her cousin, Talha ibn Ubaidillah. Now, this is important for one to pay attention to from a historical and political standpoint. As her cousin, Ibn Ubaidillah, Talha, they were both from the same tribe, Banu Tamim. There's a telling conversation that took place between Aisha and Ibn Abbas. And this was during the journey back to Mecca from Medina, as Uthman was being encircled by the revolutionaries and his reign was coming to a close. The threat in his life was becoming more and more real day by day. Aisha left Medina at a very sensitive time, even when Uthman requested for her to stay. Perhaps it was actually a directive by Talha, who was one of the leaders of the revolution taking place against Uthman in Medina, and the one who actually was calling for his death. You see, Aisha crossed paths with Ibn Abbas on the way to Mecca, and they had the following conversation. She says, "O Ibn Abbas, beware. Don't let off from this tyrant," meaning Uthman. "The people have been blinded. They have ravaged the lands of the people. I see Talha ibn Ubaidillah taking control of the state treasury and the keys to its chests. If he is given power, he will lead on the path of his cousin Abu Bakr," her father. "If something bad happens to the man, the people won't be taking refuge in anyone but our man, Ali ibn Abi Talib." Ibn Abbas responds, "Let it go. I don't want to hear your conceitedness or your bickering," Aisha would reply to Ibn Abbas, and she would walk away. Talha and Zubair joined her opposition, even though they had just paid allegiance to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Talha and Zubair, again, both being companions of the Prophet. They took the death of Uthman and they made it a mascot of their campaign to take down the new caliphate of Amir al-Mu'mineen, even though they were ones who pushed Amir al-Mu'mineen to take on the caliphate at the assassination of Uthman. It was as if Aisha had forgotten that she was actually the first to call for the assassination, for the death of Uthman, giving the decree to the revolutionaries saying, "Kill Nathal, for he has disbelieved." This echoed across the four corners of the empire, and people took it to heart. And it really had a lot of weight given the position that she held in many of the people's belief, especially with the first and second caliphates that had really promoted Aisha as being this individual who was the best wife of the Prophet. And a lot of people pushed for that during the first two caliphates, up and coming to the third caliphate. Though things changed towards the third caliphate, she still held that lofty position in many people's eyes. So what she said had a big impact on public opinion and the way they reacted to the status quo and to the ruling administration. It was these words that unsheathed the swords of the revolutionaries and validated the murder of the caliph of the time. Talha was a vesting force for the revolutionaries. He played an instrumental role. They rallied around him and they looked for him for empowerment. And he was their voice against the caliphate. Zubayr's silence in this situation was just as powerful as Talha's voice. History shows that Zubayr did not play as much of a role vocally. However, being silent in many matters had a huge impact. Such a silence was considered to be a sign of acceptance and contentment with unretractable actions. Still, history would tell that there was no comparison of the Prophet that was more fierce in his opposition to Uthman like Talha. When the revolution took its course and Uthman was barricaded in his home, Talha insisted that nothing be allowed to reach Uthman, not even a sip of water. Ali sent message to Talha to stop such nonsense, to allow the man access to water, and at the very least not to kill him thirsty, as that would be something that would be considered to be so heinous, to kill a fellow Muslim thirsty, regardless of his oppressive policies and the disenfranchised people that he had harmed. But Talha refused, leading the revolutionaries, not seeing any response or any sign of responsiveness from him or the people surrounding the house. Amir al-Mu'mineen himself would send 3 jugs filled with water to Uthman. And just before they arrived at the house, Talha got wind of that and actually stopped them immediately from bringing those jugs of water to Uthman's house. He would see Amir al-Mu'mineen nearby, and he exploded furiously, yelling at Imam Ali and telling him, "What do you have with all of this? Leave it be, Ali. Leave us be." But Imam Ali couldn't leave it be. He couldn't leave it be. They exchanged words, and Talha remained adamant on keeping the man thirsty. Uthman will be thirsty, Talha would say. Moments later, the men would climb into the house of Uthman, breaking in through the rooftops and eventually taking Uthman and slaughtering him. As the men left the house, they looked around asking, "Where's Talha ibn Ubaidillah? Where is Talha? We've killed Uthman ibn Affan. We've killed the caliph. Where is Talha? What is really peculiar in this situation from a historical standpoint is that the fact that those who wanted Uthman dead and made sure that he was killed through their influence and prowess were the same individuals who sought vengeance for his death. You see, Aisha and Talha facilitated the assassination of the caliph in directing the anger of the revolutionaries towards the house of Uthman. Though they themselves did not actually commit the crime, they were instrumental in facilitating public opinion in a way where, one, it would be accepting of it, two, it would egg on the revolutionaries to feel a validation and making sure that when they killed him, it was fine and it was something that actually had to happen in the sake of justice. They assumed that they would be able to bring the caliphate back to the tribe of Banu Tamim and back into their circle of influence with Talha as the new caliph. But their plan quickly evaporated when the people gravitated towards Ali ibn Abi Talib as the only choice as the caliph. It was only after that point, when Ali accepted the people's nomination, after many times of saying, go and seek someone else, but the people were adamant at Amir al-Mu'mineen leading as the Khalifa. It was only at this point that Aisha and Talha suddenly took up the campaign of vengeance for the blood of Uthman. Now, this all happened very quickly. Who would the vengeance be taken against? It would be no other than Ali ibn Abi Talib, Amir al-Mu'mineen. Their vengeance was not for the blood of Uthman, which they ultimately orchestrated in a very smart and strategic way, but it was for Ali taking what they thought belonged to them, because they felt that the helm, the throne, the caliphate belonged to their family and to their circles of influence. Both Talha and Zubayr had already paid allegiance to Imam Ali alayhi salam with the hopes that Imam Ali would position them as governors over Iraq and Yemen. They made their political ambitions clear after they paid homage to the new caliphate, but Ali did not entertain their bargaining. One way or another, they were looking to see positions of influence and make it happen for themselves. The caliphate didn't happen, it went to Ali ibn Abi Talib. And governorship roles over Yemen and Iraq didn't happen either, because Imam Ali alayhi salam did not find them to be qualified for those positions. Talha and Zubayr came to Imam Ali alayhi salam one night to speak to him about their future role in the caliphate. And upon entering, Imam Ali alayhi salam would blow out one candle on his desk and he would light up another candle. Talha hurriedly came in and, without even sitting down, said to Imam Ali alayhi salam, "Do you know why we paid you allegiance, O Ali?" Imam Ali alayhi salam responded simply, "Yes, I do, on the basis of respect and obedience, and presumably on the same basis that you paid allegiance to Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman." Talha replied, "No, rather, we have paid allegiance to you on the basis that we are partners in governance." Imam Ali responded swiftly, "No, but you are partners in speaking with integrity and aiding in eradicating deficits in our nation and corruption." After a moment of pause, Zubayr asks Amir al-Mu'mineen, "Why did you blow out one candle and light another when we first entered?" Imam Ali alayhi salam responded, "The first candle was purchased from the funds of the public treasury, Baytul Mal. I was busy with the affairs of the state, so I continued to use it. But since you came in here with a personal matter, a private one, I decided to light this second candle and turn off the other. The second candle being one purchased from my own personal funds." Now, Talha and Zubayr looked at each other blankly. The man would not even burn a candle outside of its very purpose. How could he appoint them to positions of power for merely paying homage to him? They left the house of Ali disappointed. Now, when their interests could not be realized by any other means, the three of them, Talha, Zubayr, and Aisha, took to a campaign that would bring thousands of Muslims to the battlefield and challenge the caliphate of Amir al-Mu'mineen at its very onset. And that would take place in the Battle of the Camel, Ma'arakat al-Jamal. Brothers and sisters, we'll be continuing tomorrow night and the night after that and examining the experiences that were had during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam And what set forth this into having the tragedy that would take place in the assassination of the commander of the faithful, peace and blessings be upon him, in the way it was. So much so that at his assassination, when he was killed, people in the lands of Damascus, in the lands of Syria, of Greater Syria, Sham, would be surprised when they heard how was he killed. They said Ali ibn Abi Talib was killed in Masjid Kufa in his prayer. Some would respond and say, Ali ibn Abi Talib prayed? This was a propaganda machine that existed at the time, especially with the Umayyads, one that was enfranchised during the caliphate of Uthman, the third caliph, and also during the second caliphate before that, with the appointment of Muawiyah as governor over Egypt, and where he had a base for himself to grow hostility towards the family of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. So as Imam Ali alayhi salam came into the fold of his new caliphate and established this new administration, he faced trouble not only from Banu Tamim, from Talha and Aisha, but he also faced it from Muawiyah. We'll see that also in the Battle of Siffin, in which Imam Ali alayhi salam faces off with Muawiyah. And finally, we'll see the Battle of Nahrawan, in which the defectors from Imam Ali alayhi salam in the Battle of Siffin go on to challenge him and accuse him of disbelief. All of this taking place within the short 4.5-year period of his caliphate. We'll end with this, brothers and sisters, and I again send my condolences to all of our grand scholars, and especially to the Imam of our time, Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, in this tragic night in which we remember the strike upon the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, in which he was struck in his prayer that would lead to his assassination and his death. عظم الله أجوركم هذا والحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة والتسليم على نبينا محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين.